Welcome to Real Deal. I'm Terra, and this week is a little different because we don't have a Giselle. Please give my co host your best get well wishes as she is out sick this week. This week's episode is going to be about Glicked, what moviegoers and studio heads are fanatically trying to create as the box office weekend of the year. Just like we had Barbenheimer last year, this year we have the release of Gladiator II, directed by Ridley Scott, and Wicked Part 1, directed by John Chu. I wanted to talk a little bit first about this whole Glicked phenom before I dive into my opinions and thoughts on both movies. I do feel like the whole Glicked thing is a little bit forced. I do think that Barbenheimer was such an organic moment. I think when, you have so many audience members flocking to the movie theater, and don't get me wrong, I love seeing tons of people come to the movies. I love that. I love knowing that a theater is going to be packed. It feels really good to see so many people in the audience with me. But I do feel like the Glicked hype is a little forced, and maybe that's because both of the movies aren't as good as Barbie and Oppenheimer. I don't think that they pull their weight, and I'll get into that a little bit later. I'm going to go ahead and start with Wicked. I think that the marketing hype has been similar to that of Barbie, where it just seems to be everywhere. There is partnerships with makeup brands and, kitchen utensils, and pretty much anything you can think of has been Wickedified, I guess. So we'll start with that. I saw Wicked a few days ago, and again, that's directed by John Chu. That stars Cynthia Erivo, Ariana Grande, Jonathan Bailey, Michelle Yeoh, Jeff Goldblum, Ethan Slater, and Bowen Yang, and also Peter Dinklage. Wicked is about it's the precursor essentially to The Wizard of Oz. If you're not familiar with the story of Wicked at all, it also kind of goes off of the Broadway musical, one of the longest running Broadway musicals, and it is based off of the 1995 George Maguire novel of the same name. So, and Wizard of Oz came out in 1939. So that's just kind of the sequence of events here. A little bit about the plot. Elphaba, an ostracized but defiant girl born with green skin, and Galinda, a privileged aristocrat born popular, become extremely unlikely friends in the magical land of Oz. As the two girls struggle with their opposing personalities, their friendship is tested as both begin to fulfill their destinies as Glinda the Good and the Wicked Witch of the West. I have so many thoughts on this. I do want to say, I'm a little biased in the sense that I love theater. I was a theater kid in high school, so I kind of am annoying about Defying Gravity and holding space for Defying Gravity, all of that shit. I love musicals, and I also do really like Ariana Grande. But I do try to put my bias aside when I watch movies. I try not to let that get in the way of me thinking critically about a film. And that being said, there is so much that I enjoyed about this movie, and there's a lot that I didn't. My overall rating is a 3 stars. I know that everyone is feeling really touched and moved by this, and I did cry twice during the film. I did think that there were some beautiful moments. But my biggest complaint is that those biggest moments in the film are colored so terribly. I know that Twitter already really dug into this movie, like a year ago when the trailer came out, and everyone was like, why is this so bland? Are there no gaffers? Is there a gaffer shortage? Who is doing lighting on this? Unfortunately, you guys, it didn't get better. They didn't Sonic their movie where they heard our complaints and went back to fix it. It's still just as bad. The lighting is pretty horrendous, and it has such grandiose set building that it is such a letdown to see how poorly it's colored, and it's really a disappointment. I'm not really sure what happened there, but you have all these beautiful moments and intense choreography filling the stage and filling the screen, and it's just kind of painful to look at. It just looks like natural lighting, but not in a normal, pretty way. It's a little bit blinding. I think my other grievance with this movie is, and this kind of goes into a bit of spoiler territory. You're having Elphaba come and adjust to her life at Oz after pretty much being ostracized for, her entire life since birth because she is different, and she's experiencing life through the lens of otherness. And I do think casting Cynthia as a Black woman was such a great touch to that because Elphaba is Black. That entire experience speaks to Blackness, and that is something that really did touch me about the film. However, the entirety of Wicked is based around her relationship with her professor, Dr. Dillamond, who is an animal. He's a talking animal. I'm gonna lose you guys, folks. Like, I know it, but just stay with me. There are animals in Oz that can talk. They can talk, and so they are teachers and citizens of Oz, like a normal community members. And slowly, Oz is trying to ostracize them, kidnap them, punish them, kind of get rid of the talking animal community, make them lose their ability to talk, down generations. So eventually you can cage them and treat them as one would an animal in our reality, right? So Elphaba feels very disturbed by this fact. She wants to get to the bottom of it. She wants to meet the wizard. She wants to understand, why is this happening to animals everywhere? And that's a really big plot point in the musical and a really large plot point in the book. It's not everything, but it is the basis of how things lead to where they lead, with Elphaba essentially being casted as this villain that, the Wizard of Oz can frame for all of his wrongdoings and crimes. They do not pay much attention to this plot point at all in the movie. So much so that you're kind of left forgetting why all of this is even happening. And I found that was a little frustrating, especially to release a movie like this in the political climate that we have, where you are kind of making a comment on how important it is to stand up for communities that cannot stand up for themselves. It's pretty ignored in this film. And I thought that was a really glaring issue. Because, like I said, it becomes so important in the second film or the second half of the musical. And so, it's a little difficult to care and to buy into the story that Elphaba has going on here, because it's like, why am I invested in this? I don't even remember what the main point was. Yes, friendship is a main focal point of the film, but it's really about more of that. It's about standing up for what's right and goodness, goodness triumphing over evil. And how good are you if it's just performative? Things to think about. Those are my main grievances with the film. I did think that Cynthia and Ariana were spectacular. I thought that their vocals were so strong. They sounded so beautiful together. I might understand now why they're crying in every interview. I get it. I understand the connection between them. And there is a few really special scenes in the movie where you're brought into that connection and you're like, okay, I understand. I get what they have going on between them. So, with all that considered, I give it a solid 3. I was fluctuating between maybe 3.5 and 4, but I do think that the things that they've left out and, that were mistakes are kind of egregious, because it really impacts the way that you are viewing the film and the overall message and story of the movie. So I'm sticking to a 3, y'all. I'm speaking my piece. That's what I'm leaving it at. Moving on to Gladiator. Gladiator II, directed by Ridley Scott. Here's a little bit of the synopsis. Prepare to be entertained. Years after witnessing the death of revered hero Maximus at the hands of his uncle, Lucius is forced to enter the Colosseum after his home is conquered by the tyrannical emperors who now lead Rome with an iron fist. With rage in his heart and the future of the empire at stake, Lucius must look to his past to find strength and honor to return the glory of Rome to its people. I had really, really high hopes for this. While I'm not a man, I do care about the Roman Empire. I do love movies set in that time and in that space, and I think that Gladiator, the first film, is such a force to be reckoned with. I think it's such a cinematic masterpiece with Russell Crowe. I just think that film is wonderful, and so I was really looking forward to this. I really like members of the cast: Paul Mescal, Denzel Washington, Pedro Pascal, Connie Nielsen, Joseph Quinn, and Fred Hetchinger are the main cast of this movie. I was really excited. I'm a Paul Mescal girly, like that's very known. I love Pedro Pascal, but I have to say, Denzel, to no surprise, let me not be disrespectful here, to nobody's shock, this movie was carried on Denzel Washington's back. He steals every single scene that he's in. He's just magnetic, and I love his performance. I mean, I just think he's amazing. However, the downside of that is that you put somebody next to him, somebody like Paul Mescal, who is not as seasoned, and who really shines in really melancholy and quiet, sadder dramas. He doesn't really live up to that hype, and the whole tagline of this film is "prepared to be entertained," but I wasn't. I wasn't. I think that the most entertaining moments are those with Denzel on the screen and those in the Colosseum, because even though Ridley Scott is a director who does not give a fuck about, historical accuracies, and he's got things like sharks in the Colosseum and, baboons that look engineered kind of like the Hunger Games, it's entertaining. I'm going to give him that. I can turn a blind eye to historical inaccuracies to have fun. Like, that's fine. However, the performances did not live up to the hype. Paul Mescal never fully gets there, and you don't really buy into this story of revenge that he's got. His whole driving force is rage, but you never really feel the full force of that anger. And, it's eventually revealed, obviously, that, Connie Nielsen, who plays Lucilla, is his mother. You never really understand that connection because he's really hostile to her at first, and then it's like a coin flip to where he's like, I love you. I'll do anything to protect you. And you're like, oh, okay, I thought you hated her. I'm not really sure how we got from A to B. What happened to the rage? I don't understand. It's not really there. It's not really solid. I loved Pedro Pascal in general, but in this film, I do feel like he's a little one note. I would have liked to see a little bit more with his role. I would have liked to see what else he could offer. Again, it's just kind of like nobody is living up to Denzel. Connie Nielsen, who is one of the only returning actresses from the first film, if you don't count all of these black and white archival footage flashback scenes, which again, that's a different story. I don't know how I feel about that. Sometimes I feel like we have to let it die. I don't know if it was necessary. But back to my main point about Connie Nielsen. She's fine. I think that she does a really good job. Again, I just think with the scene partners that she had, it's kind of like she's sweeping over them, and I don't know if that's the fault of what these characters were given to work with because the dialogue is not very strong, or maybe it's just that, they can't handle these roles. I don't know. I'm not sure. I think that there's flaws with the movie itself cast aside. Like I said, the dialogue was weak, and you've got all of this rage and anger building up to what you perceive to be the fall of Rome near the end of the film. And we essentially get this kumbaya ending where Paul Mescal is like, brothers, lay down your arms. Like, we're better than this. There's no way you made me sit for 2 hours and 20 something minutes. Great Colosseum battles, fine. But you have both armies at the gates of Rome, and then that's it. It's just like, oh, let's be friends. Huh? That's like if Mike Tyson sat down and was like, actually, I don't want to fight anymore. Maybe we should make bracelets. Please. I didn't come here for that. Like, I wanted to see war. I wanted to see a film fueled by rage, and I thought that that's what I was going to get. But it just never ends up delivering on that. And that kind of brings me to the need for legacy sequels. I'm not sure if we really need to keep doing that. Maybe it's okay to let something die. Not everything has to be a franchise. I know that Ridley Scott was even eyeing a third film with Paul again. Please don't do that. Let's just not do that. I think there is power in knowing when to let something fucking die. And I think Gladiator does not need a third movie. I don't even think that it really needed a second movie. I think that this was entertaining at best, maybe in the middle 30 to 40 minutes. It's got a slow start and sometimes that's a necessary build, but it really just doesn't end up delivering on that entertainment that's promised. And I think Russell Crowe and Denzel Washington leave such big shoes to fill. And they never really kind of reach off the ground for the rest of this cast. I did want to mention, though, that I thought Joseph Quinn was pretty fantastic in this. It is exciting to see him kind of do different roles, so he's not very boxed in from, A Quiet Place and Stranger Things. I'm excited to see what else he's got. He has another movie coming up with Pedro Pascal, the Fantastic Four. Everybody has to do their fucking Marvel jury duty time, so I am kind of excited to see how that goes. But overall, thoughts on Glicked. I think if you are going to see both of these, I would almost say to see Wicked first, and then Gladiator, because Wicked is just such a fantastic ride that does make you feel things, even though the coloring is disappointing and there's a few moments that are a bit lackluster. I do think it's at least fun. It's fun to bring friends to and try not to sing along. Don't be annoying. There are sing along showings coming out. Go to those, please, instead. Don't piss everybody off around you. But I don't think Glicked holds a candle to the magic of the moment of Barbenheimer. I think that Barbenheimer was so organic. and really inspiring because of the overall messages in Barbie and Oppenheimer that do deliver from beginning to end credits. And I don't think that you really have those moments here in Wicked or in Gladiator. That's just my thoughts. We'll have to see what Giselle thinks when my co host is back, you guys. But thank you for listening to my solo dolo episode.